Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talk to Rami. This is Rami, your host. Today's podcast guest is a dedicated Dr. Christina Smith, a functional medicine practitioner and a doctor of chiropractic specializing in holistic injury recovery and chronic inflammation prevention, which is we all heard and sometimes suffered from. With a background that includes work in wellness clinics and nonprofits around the world, Dr. Smith brings together her wide-ranging experiences and ongoing education in holistic healthcare, brain health, and prenatal chiropractic care. She is a firm believer. This is what I like about her. She is a firm believer in comprehensive wellness, that everybody should learn about their body, and she aims to help those people to aim to support their patient in their health journeys. Please welcome Dr. Kristen Smith. Dr. Smith, welcome.
Hello. Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. As I said earlier, off the camera, I said I read your bio, I read your what you do is very interesting, and I'm always fascinated myself personally that what our body does, and most of us we do not recognize that the body is a foundation of human being. And I have a personal training and I go to gym, and he always tells me, listen to your body. This is something we all miss. But can you share your journey toward becoming a functional medicine practitioner and doctor of chiropractic? How did you end up doing this? What was your story?
Yeah, absolutely. It has not been a straight path. And
Definitely.
yes, I think a lot of it has come out of following the things that made me say, wow, and the things that I was just intrigued by and interested in. And earlier, I had worked in research labs and I thought I was going to do stem cell research. And I worked in psychology labs and did a lot of analysis that way. And I was very data driven and did not expect to end up working on the patient side of things. But then I was, in my early 20s and going through the stress of school and figuring out who you're becoming and pushing myself a little extra hard. And I wasn't totally happy. And earlier, in your teen years, in our conventional system, if something is a little bit off in your system, they usually give you a suggestion to use a pharmaceutical to balance it. And the intentions were good, but the approach did not help my biochemistry in the way that we were hoping. And I found over the years that my anxiety had increased to a point that didn't feel like me, and I was really confused about it. And then I finally got to a point of stress one day where I was like, you know what, it isn't working for me. And I
Wow.
had a physical therapist refer me to a special kind of physical therapist that did neurological PT. And they ended up doing this technique where they literally just touched my skin and started introducing me to meditation, but they did it in this way where they kind of induce a meditative state. And that was the thing that got me really intrigued into body work, because I came out of 3 appointments with that person as like a very new person and never really had those crippling bouts of anxiety anymore. And my response was, I need to understand what you just did. And so then I doubled my major and I got biology and psychology and cognitive neuroscience and started studying the interaction between the body and the brain. And I thought that I knew what I was going to do. And then that just made me take time after graduate school to really think about it. And I decided to go travel and work abroad, and worked in a number of different positions, from after school programs to women's economic empowerment to working in hospitals, and discovered that working in a hospital wasn't the right environment for me.
It's a very, very, very hard,
It is.
career.
It is. It's a very honorable decision and
Very.
field to go into. But you are held by a certain set of rules that aren't necessarily always your own. And I discovered that I wanted to really figure out what my philosophy was on health. And when I was abroad, I also worked with shamans, and I worked in a conventional system, and I saw what really old cultures thought of as health. And, that kind of brings in the concept of energetic health and spiritual health, which I think our conventional system kind of forgets about. And that's where I really got into holistic health. And I came back and I worked for, it happened to be a chiropractic office, but it was really an integrative functional medicine office. And they just did an amazing job of taking care of their patients. And we'd have people that had been bounced around the system for years feeling better in 3 months. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what healthcare is supposed to be, is this integrative perception of you as a whole human and a whole person, and realizing that one provider might be able to help a piece, but another provider might be able to help another piece. And you might be a part of someone's journey for a little while, but working as a team and communicating, like that's where the magic lies. And I think it also allows time, because that's one of the other things that I realized in the conventional model is like you just don't have enough time to see somebody as a whole person. Like you are restricted on the amount of time you can spend. And so in the functional medicine model, it's all about doing this really thorough intake, seeing people as the entire story of their lives and not only what's happened to them recently, and understanding how all those things compound and affect each other. And that just kind of made me fall in love with it in a whole new way. And I talked to a lot of different providers about which route I should go. And picking a degree was hard because there really is no degree for a holistic wellness practitioner.
Yeah.
And so I just picked a degree I picked DC, Doctor of Chiropractic, because of how I'd be educated to think about the body and to think about health. And chiropractic teaches in the vitalistic model. So instead of let me figure out everything that's wrong with you and stop it, it's let me figure out everything that's right with you and foster it. And that
Wow.
is a model that lands better for me.
I don't know if you agree with this statement or not, but I think as a human, we are all influenced by forces outside, maybe outside of our control, but like the body, the first thing you do, like they say, okay, you got to take this medicine, you got to take that. This is the way you got. The first thing I think, nothing against all the doctors. I know we have to take medications,
Oh, yeah.
but what you just said, that basically what we have to do actually to study not only the environment that you're living, but study your habits, study what your body reacts to, what reacts, and then just do that intake, form information, and then based on that, you have a holistic approach rather than the traditional that, hey, you have a fever, you gotta take a Tylenol. Like I remember, I give you example. Like I served in the war. I was in military. I came back after 4 years. I had a severe PTSD. I never forget. I told my mother that my skin is peeling off and is burning, and she said no. I said I can feel it is burning. Like, and she said, and I didn't know that how this unbalanced chemical in my brain was reacting to the past experiences for the PSD that I just got off of it, and it was reacting through my skins. And I saw a psychologist, and she said, this is not a medicine. This is what your body is telling you and reacting you for the past experiences that you faced. And she worked with me, talked to me, and a lot of from the taking a bath, from this Epsom salt, this all that stuff, and so you got to listen to your body. And I agree with you that. But this question is that why, as a practitioner, why you think that we're not taking that approach for our health? Because the body is the most important thing, I think in life. Why we not taking that approach and we're not expanding it?
I could not agree with you more. That's a deep question with a lot of different angles I could answer from. But I think the one I'm going to come at it from is I think we are through the concept of functional medicine and integrative healthcare. And that is why I love, even though it's challenging sometimes to be fighting the system a lot, that's why I like being on the forefront of all of the new ways of approaching care and approaching these things. And helping people to listen to their bodies. And, the story I told initially, that was just how I kind of got turned on to functional medicine in the beginning. But I've had many experiences since then, including like my own health issues that I had to figure out, that I was, even working with really good functional medicine providers, and we couldn't quite figure it out. And it really came down to coming back to listening to my body and, like you were saying, really working with your mind. And, a lot of people don't realize that PTSD can absolutely come from something like being in service, and, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
And it can also come from something in your life making you feel very helpless. And that can come from a lot of different angles. And the neurological community is now classifying post-traumatic stress disorder as a brain injury. And people forget that when you have a brain injury, it can actually cause an injury to your gut as well. Like leaky brain and leaky gut tend to go together in both directions. And then when that happens, you can start to, depending on the severity of it, get what's called subclinical levels of endotoxemia, which means that you're accidentally having things from your intestines leak into your bloodstream and create toxicity of your blood. And then that can affect your brain, and it can affect brain inflammation, and it can affect how you perceive your reality. And then your perception of your
Wow.
reality can cause you to be way more stressed out, or way more anxious, or way more worrying, or more depressed. And then that causes further degradation of the tissues. But to your main question of, why are we not adopting this more? I like to think that we are. I like to think that we are creating new models of care. And like the conventional system absolutely has its place. Like if I broke my arm or I needed surgery, like that's where I'd be going. But for the people who have a chronic illness and all their labs look within range, those are the people that kind of get left by the wayside. And I think a lot of people, and like veterans and things like that, who struggle with PTSD, and there's nothing really wrong with them on paper because it's invisible, they kind of end up in this crevasse between healthcare systems. And I don't know, I end up catching some of those people. And it all just always, every treatment plan I come up with is different for every individual. Like they're all customized, but the concept is the same. It's figure out where the inflammation is coming from, protect the tissues, and help the biology function in the way that it was designed to. So it's just foster what it needs support, or foster where it needs support, and give it nutrition and nourishment where it needs. And that can be, you may need nourishment of your mind and your thinking patterns. You may need nourishment of your body and the food that you're eating. You may need to eliminate some big inflammatory instigator in your life, like an environmental exposure, based on where you're living or what you're dealing with. So it can come from a lot of different places. But my hope is that we're moving more in the model of teaching people about their bodies. And you can do functional medicine in a way that's still fairly conventional, where it's still, a pill for an ill, that kind of thing. It's just now it's a
Yeah.
vitamin instead of a prescription. And I do think that's a place where you can get lost in functional medicine. And it's really important to understand the biochemistry as best you can and understand what you're dealing with, while also removing your ego from the situation and honoring the fact that we'll probably never fully understand our bodies and how they work. Like they're just too
Because,
complex.
because I'm sure you came to conclusion and you were influenced by your personal experience or injuries that you had prior to that. Is that right? That you came into conclusion that, okay, this is the time that I really want to listen to my body.
Yeah, I kind of had no other choice in that scenario. And, a lot of people will say, like, well, where did my illness start? And it's like, well, it's kind of a hard question, because I teach people a lot about what's called allostatic load, which is the overall capacity on your body. And I can't necessarily say like if you got sick because of the mold exposure that you had, or because of the breakup that you went through, or because of your really poor diet, but I would guess that it's an accumulation of all of them. And that is usually when people start to come close to their capacity or their threshold or their allostatic load. And that allostatic load, when you reach that tipping point, that tends to be where disease occurs. And it might be that, like my situation, right? I got injured, and then I kept pushing, and then I got injured again, and then I kept pushing, and then I got
Wow.
injured again, and then I kept pushing. And then I had, and then COVID happened, and that was just like stressful for a majority of people in a variety of ways. And
Yep.
I had multiple future years of plans and finances that had already been spent on travel evaporate, and that was super stressful. And I had moved out of my house, so I was like driving across the country in a car, not
Oh
knowing where
my.
I was going to live. And then I arrived home, and because I didn't know where else to go, and then just the stress of that, and then had some other things fall through, and then had a mold exposure, and then had
Wow.
another stress, and then that
You
was it.
got so much.
It was too much, right? It was the allostatic load. I
Wow.
had reached my capacity, and my body just became allergic to everything, like including food and B vitamins. And I was working with a
Wow.
bunch of great practitioners, and they're like, take these vitamins. I was like, I literally can't. And so I finally just stopped everything and asked my body, I was like, what do you need? And my body was like, I need to sit here and meditate and eat these 4 nourishing foods and just be with myself. And so that's what I did for a
Wow.
while. I took a break because, you can't work as a practitioner when you're in a state like that. And that's one of my qualms with our conventional system. Like, you can't make doctors work a 36-hour shift and then expect them to operate well.
Yeah, I agree with you
And
100%.
so I needed to take a break. And I asked for support and I asked for help. And I took a couple weeks and kind of really went inward and had some major conversations with my body and turned back to meditation, which I had been playing with and known about for a decade plus, but really dove into it deep this time. And it was so fascinating to watch my body transform as I meditated. And it took weeks of very intent practice and reshaping my perspective on the world from operating from a place of waiting for the next shoe to drop and waiting for the next thing to go wrong, which happens when you hit that many roadblocks, and switching back to appreciating life and being grateful for what I have and reminding my body that we're not under attack and my immune system doesn't need to be in defense mode. And my stuff would show up in my skin. So it was a really visual and obvious thing when it would start to go away and when it would start to come back and when it would go away
Oh,
and come back based on my practice. And then I got it to calm down enough. I was able to bring foods back in and work on nourishing my body. But yeah, that was a crazy time. Like, my brain wasn't operating well. My hormones had just kind of plummeted, but I also wasn't able to eat. So, like, fasting's great, but not when you're in a depleted state. Then it just depletes
yeah.
everything else. So it was a whole journey of self discovery through that.
But I had a discussion with a friend of mine actually yesterday, and we were talking. I told him that I'm gonna, have a chat with you, and he said, I don't think so. Our body tells us the truth. I said, no, our body doesn't lie. This is because your brain, your mind can lie, can trick you. This is the thing. Your mind and brain are really it tricked me many times, but my body cannot. It doesn't lie. Cannot trick me. Which way? It doesn't make sense when you have a stomach ache, when you have like some painful thing and going on in your body, the whole thing, or they say it's not a healthy gut. It's not lying. It's telling you something, and how you're gonna feel it, how you're gonna fix it, that's a different story. But so many people they tell me I am healthy, man. I said, nope. You got something somewhere, somehow, it's not working. You might see it surface steady like that, but if you really go with somebody deep and discover your whole body, I think it's something wrong. Maybe it's not something serious, but nobody is 100% fully charged and good to go. I don't believe that. I don't know what you think, but my body lied to me. Not, my mind lied to me so many times. My body was telling me the truth. Like for sleeping, for this, for hydration, is that my body needs, I need water, and I wouldn't listen to it, and I was so dizzy, and I said, okay, I have to take more than 8 glasses of water. That's my body is telling me. But they said, no, just 8 glasses of water, you will be fine. That's the norm. I said, no. What is your take on that? And basically, the correlation between your mind and the body and which one is right, because that's the subject right now. I talk to anybody, they really think that they know their body and the body tells them the truth. But they said, yeah, it might, but body doesn't lie.
So I am so glad you asked that question, because this is exactly what I try to teach people about, is that your body speaks in its own language. It's just most of us have never been trained of how to listen to it. And that is a lot of what you learn when you go through school, getting whatever your degree is, whether that's, a doctor of chiropractic, a medical doctorate, a doctor of osteopathy. All of those schools, all they provide is a skeleton. They provide you a framework of like understanding the language of the body. It's your
Yep.
responsibility as a practitioner to go do a ton of continuing education and blossom into that framework, like what your belief and understanding of physiology is. And your body's also dynamic. So you might have a day where 8 glasses of water is fine for you, and you might have a different day where you need
And you need
11
more.
because you drank the other night, or encountered some pollution in the world, and your body is trying to detoxify and it uses water to do that. So if I can start training people to understand those things, where it's like, they go out, they have fun with their friends, they have some pizza, they have a drink, like harmless, right? Not that big a deal, should be normal. And then they wake up in the morning and like they're feeling lethargic and puffy and stiff. Their body is having a little bit of an inflammation reaction, protecting them from the things in the stuff that they ingested that isn't ideal. And it's fine. You should be able to handle it. But if you do that all the time and you never give your body a chance to recover and a chance to process it out and a chance to return to baseline, and you accumulate that over decades, that is how we get illness. Is it's this accumulation of stuff, of compounding things. And if it's your diet for a little while, and then you're dealing with toxins or whatever, and then you deal with stress, then that's how it compounds. And I think the brain is interesting, and I liked your idea of how like the body can't really lie. The body just kind of follows instructions. Your brain is sending the instructions. And one of the facts that I find fascinating that a lot of people don't know is that if you are stressing and your stress pathways are activated, that's like your cortisol and your epinephrine and your adrenaline, you actually have microbes in your gut that have receptors for those hormones, and they grow
Wow.
when they sense those hormones. So if you're stressed out all the time, you actually create dysbiosis of bad bacteria in your gut, and you give
That's
yourself
what they
GI
say in
issues.
everything. That's what they say in everything comes from stress. Is that right?
I am a from my own situation, I think I just learned that you can't just throw supplements at everything and always expect it to work. If someone is in a state where they're in fight or flight, even if they've been there for 20 years, their body is not going to absorb those supplements, and their chemistry is not going to act the way that you expect it to, because they have a different pathway on. And our immune system has a couple jobs. It builds, it cleans, and it protects. If it's protecting you, it's not going to have time to clean. If it's cleaning, it's not going to have time to build. If it's not protecting you and it's not cleaning up a bunch of debris, then it can start to build again. So we have to enter people into a neurological signaling state where their body has the resources, the capacity, and the signals to build. Otherwise, it's really hard to heal an illness. So you can give them a bunch of stuff, but if they don't get the signals right, which all start with your thinking and your brain and the energy that you create in your body, it's just not going to land. And I think that's one of the big things that's missing from healthcare is it's just become on a lot of levels really depersonalized. And so I had an old mentor. Chiropractors, they kind of come in a range. I'm more in the range that does a lot of kind of mixture of things in functional medicine and just whatever works for the body. But I love the chiropractic philosophy, which is all about like the flow of life force. And I had an old philosophical teacher say the first adjustment you give someone is the conversation you have with them. And I have found that
Wow.
to be incredibly true, because I've had patients come in where, they'll sit there and they'll rattle off the last 5 years of crazy medical trauma that's happened with a totally straight face and no emotion, and be like, what do I do? And to me, that just signals that they're totally disconnected from their body, and their body's not even going to give the signals that we're putting into it if we just start with supplements. So I usually start that person with physical work, where I'm like, I would like to work on your body and help your nervous system enter into a different state. And then we can start focusing more on nutrition, because that same person, if you sit there and you give them a giant list of stuff to do and lifestyle changes to make, their nervous system's already overwhelmed. They're not going to be able to integrate those suggestions. So I have to get their brain to a state where they can actually hear me. And that can require physical care, or if they're, at distance, maybe meditative care, but I'll usually ask them to maybe investigate some physical care as well, because that was one of the other reasons I chose chiropractic. Is you're not just taught what to do when you touch people, you're taught how to touch people, and you're taught how to listen to their body. And like that's a huge part of study in school, is like learning how to listen with your ears and with your hands. And I wanted to be able to do that for people so that I could do the technique I mentioned in the beginning, which is called associative awareness technique. And that has changed the trajectory of a lot of my complicated cases and allowed me to work with some other elements that I wouldn't have been able to work with if I hadn't done that first. And I collaborate with other practitioners. So, if someone needs to see a counselor, I send them to a counselor. If, I collaborate with other chiropractors. I love working with PTs. I have MDs and DOs I collaborate with. So to me, degrees don't matter. It's like, what do you study? What are you passionate about? What are you good at? What's your why? And if you're clear on that, then I'll send my patient to you and we can collaborate. But yeah, so I guess that would be my take on that.
Based on what you just said, most of your patients, they coming to you from the mind to the body or from the body to the mind. Like, what is the first approach? I know you just said that you got to work with them, but is it really, sometimes I believe that I know our mind is so strong that that's what those athletic people, Navy SEALs guide. We go to a program, like I was in the special forces. You want to give up, and then you just your body really cannot take it, and you pushing it to its limits. And they said, no, I gotta go. It sometimes is fascinating, but at the same time confusing. That who is in control here? Is it my mind or is it my body? It happened to me so many times. I didn't know which way I have to go. My body says, no, you're hurting me. But my brain says, no, you got to be fine. Tell her to go. Don't give up. And this is anything in life that I sometimes it's really hard to say. It's a central nervous system tells you what to do with your body, or vice versa.
Yeah. So let me present a challenge. How about the idea that you are not your mind?
What does that mean?
So that is, if you start to dive into the realm of meditation and philosophy and kind of concepts around the universe, it is the idea that you are not the voice in your head. You are the presence observing the voice speaking.
Looking your side from the outside inside.
Correct. It's called metacognition. So it's the idea that like you're not your mind, you're not your body. You are the energetic presence that is observing it all. And so you can be in your mind and be really stressed out and having conversations with yourself about all the horrible things going on in your life. And then you can take a minute this is why, I advocate for meditation, is I think it's a really misunderstood thing. It's not just like sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop, not thinking about anything. It's learning how to tame your mind and control it as a tool, and practicing that, which takes practice. It's hard, but you start to realize like you don't have to listen to everything your mind is saying, and you can also switch to whatever perspective you choose. So going back to myself as an example, right? My mind was instructing my body that we were under attack and my nervous system needed to be on alert and my immune system needed to be active. When I had a conversation enough internally by going really deeply inward and realizing that that was the perception that my mind and body were getting from the energy that I was giving it. When I started going inward and really working with a shift in my energy, where I focused on the sensation of feeling calm and peace and relief and joy and curiosity, that energetic shift shifted the signals that my mind was sending to my body. And now if you dive deeper into physics work and stuff like Dr. Joe Dispenza is researching, then that goes into stuff around when you change an energetic frequency, being like your emotion or your state of feeling rather than thinking, that energetic frequency changes the matter around it. So if you can change your energetic being, it will actually change how your atoms are presenting, which is fascinating to me and obviously is like a huge practice, but there's a ton of research going on in this field right now, and I think it's becoming wider knowledge. I think it was wider knowledge in the past, and then it got a bit suppressed, and now it's kind of making a comeback.
Basically what you're telling me, turn your feeling into energy and use it for the more approach for healing.
Yes, absolutely. I
You know,
design a lot of
but
meditations for patients around.
I have a question for you. This is what I am suffering from,
Sure.
and maybe a lot of people is not suffering. One of my biggest dream in life. This is so funny. It's so funny to so many people. I love to use alarm clock. Like I never use alarm in my life. And I went to see a practitioner. I went to see a doctor. Like for example, if I go to bed at 11, I have to be up at 5. My eyes will open at 4:30. If I go to bed at 8 p.m. and I want to be up at 6, my eyes would open 5. Like I have a dream to just punch that snooze button. Like it's one of my believe it or not, this is it's one of my big dreams that I use the alarm. And I saw a doctor. It says your brain is on, and I don't know what is going on. I don't know how I'm gonna not turn it off. I don't know how can I just like say, oh, sorry, I'm late. I sleep. I slept over. It never happened for me. I don't. This is probably from the service, but I don't think so. But I don't know how this brain thing works. But as I said, it's very fascinating. It's really very fascinating that how you absorb oxygen when you sleep at night, how your brain tells your body go to this state of calmness and just chill. Time is all that stuff that I think if we figure that thing out, oh my God, we're gonna live over 100 years.
I could see that. The brain fascinates me, and I think that's why I did so much research around it and understanding how it interacts with the body. And like even stuff where people have multiple personality disorder, and one of those personalities has diabetes and the other personality doesn't. And they've shown that with lab testing, right? Yeah, that face. That's the face that I made too.
Are you
No, I'm
joking or
not
are you
joking.
serious?
It's like people with multiple.
Is this like is this is
Uh-huh.
proven?
Yeah, they have done blood tests on people with multiple personality disorder.
Wow.
Your brain, like your brain will instruct your
Wow.
body on what hormones it's producing. And that, like, I don't even still fully understand that, but I find that
I
stuff,
just got a
I know,
goosebump.
I find that stuff amazing. And, like the work that I mentioned that Dr. Joe Dispenza is doing, he had he's had crazy health remissions of people that were told that they were terminal multiple times over. And he has books about it, and he sees it on the regular every year when he goes around the world like teaching his stuff. And now they're collecting it in data, like really hard scientific data, and they're
Wow.
going through peer reviewed journals like it's happening. And I find this stuff intriguing, and I think we have forgotten the capacity of our own being. And, when you think about the power of the mind, like there's some research that dives into it and says that our mind works in multiple dimensions and like your memories are stored elsewhere. I find that intriguing too. And, those are more theoretical, but stuff that people are looking into. But we know that you can measure brainwaves with a magnet that does not touch your head. So therefore, your thoughts are not contained inside of your head. You basically produce your own Wi-Fi. So we have an energetic
Wow.
field, like we're energetic beings. And that is why all different modalities work in one way or another. It's just about you and your belief system and what works for you and what you resonate best with. And that's why different things can have different effects on different people. Is it's about how you relate to that thing. And so, chiropractic might work really well for one person, whereas acupuncture might work really well for somebody else. And I might have two patients with exactly the same symptoms, but they need completely different supplements because their bodies and their biochemistry is doing different things. And I think that's one of the other things that can be confusing for people is they think that like one illness is going to show up as one symptom. And it's not really how your body works. Like you can have an Achilles heel in your body. Like I'm pretty sure my body's Achilles heel is my skin. Like anytime something goes wrong, it usually shows up in my skin. Your skin is, to me, a part of your brain, comes from the ectoderm, which is where your nervous system comes from in utero and as an embryo. And so your skin is very representative of like what's going on in your body. But, for some people, maybe it's a ligament thing. Maybe they continually get sprains, or maybe it's a gut thing, or maybe it's depression, or maybe it's joint pain. Like all of those things, that's just like your body's presentation and your flashing red light of like, something's off, we're inflamed, I need to balance. And if I can teach people to start to realize what that is in themselves, because I can't tell them what it is, like it's about them paying attention to themselves and listening in their life. I can tell them what I see in lab work and what I see from their story, but they're the only ones who can really discover like how their body responds to things. And like you asked me in the beginning about coffee and like why I don't drink coffee anymore. And I've just realized like for me, it stresses my body out. Like I can do it and I get a lot of energy, but it's wired. It's wired energy. And I feel really anxious and nervous. And like I did way back in the beginning in college, but now I understand that I have an option to feel differently. And I like how I feel without it better. So I just choose that more often versus I can have coffee and I can choose to feel a little wired, and that's fine. I just realized over time of experimenting with my own body that I prefer how I feel without it. And so but that was something I
Yeah.
had to discover for myself. No one could tell me that.
Like for sleeping, if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, I'm just gonna whack. And, the next day I'm really out of it. Some people, like I have a friend, 4 hours of sleep, he's fine. And I said, how you do it? He said, it's just my body. And I said, I can't do that, man. I cannot do that. I have a, severe migraine, but I'm controlling it. But the doctor said is you have to just kind of control not only in what your own environment, but what you eat, what you put in your body, and the sleep and heat. It will trigger my migraine. My body says, "Oh, stop," you know, you're getting out of thing. But based on what we discussed, basically, what you're telling me, there is no unique approach to health recovery, right? Everybody's different.
Everybody,
We can't
yeah,
just
everybody's different. I mean, if I had to come up with like a general approach, it would kind of be what I mentioned earlier, where it's like find where the inflammation is coming from, limit that, and provide the body the nutrients that it's missing. And I mean, that's a really simplified down version of it. And, sometimes it requires multiple lab tests to figure that out of like what it is that they need. And that is the art of functional medicine, is figuring out the right questions to ask and figuring out what needs to be done. But ultimately, the goal is the same of like figure out what is upsetting the body and figure out how to balance it. Like ingest and do nourishing things and avoid toxic things. But our system, the tricky part of that is understanding what's toxic. And in our current environment,
everything is toxic.
correct, yes. And this is why food, I think, has become such a bigger player. And what I see a lot now is I see people having really bad reactions to mold exposure. And I think a lot of practitioners write that off because they're like, whatever, like our whole environment has mold, like that's dumb. Okay, sure, but also our environment has changed drastically in the couple last years. And I look at mold as like gas on the fire. So like whatever your fire is, like if you have some kind of weird environmental exposure, it just blows it up. And then you have to deal with the
Yep.
cleanup. And that's the tricky part. But to me, it just tells me that everyone is kind of reaching their threshold, which is why it's so important to be more careful with your food. Is unfortunately, especially here in the States, like we have thousands of chemicals that are allowed here that are not allowed in other countries. And we are ingesting them and feeding them to our children in the form of colorful shapes that are synthetic and came out of a machine and have nothing to do with nature. And food is information for our body. So those are signals, and we should be eating whole, real foods. If you eat foods that are synthetic, so I had a chef I was speaking to, I really loved what he said. He said, you should eat foods that are ingredients rather than foods that are made of ingredients. And I thought that was a really good way to put it. because it just kind of simplifies
Wow.
everything down. Because people ask me all the time, like, why can't I do dairy? Like, why can't I do butter? Why can't I do gluten? And I'm like, well, you might be able to, but somebody else might not. And if it's upsetting your body and you have an immune reaction to it, it's probably not the thing for you. And if I just tell people, like, try to avoid processed stuff for the most
Yep.
part, that's like a pretty good approach. But the reason everyone's different and unique is because your immune system will have reacted to different things in your life differently than your friend. And if your immune system reacts to dairy and gluten and your friend's does not, your friend is probably going to be fine with it, whereas your body's going to react. And not to say that you can never have those things, but our immune response has a lifelong memory. So if you become sensitive to something at some point, you can down regulate that response, but you're always going to have a little bit of memory to it. And so if you over consume that thing, it might make your body upset. If you over consume that thing when you're in a state of a lot of damage and injury and your gut is upset, it's going to affect you more than if you ate that thing when you're like really healthy and laying on the beach.
Wow. Basically, what we just talked about is in order to know your body, you have to know your ecosystem. Like what kind of ecosystem you're living in, like as far as what you put in your mouth, what kind of exercise you do. Like I love meditation, but I'm gonna keep trying it. But as soon as I want to do it, my mind goes, God, it's so hard to put that thing in the cage. Even I went to the ranch, which is nobody, middle of nowhere. I was sitting at the top of the hill, but it was hard for me and to just hold it and. But I'm keep practicing. But I think that this whole ecosystem that you said, that's so important for us to understand not only our body but the mind as well, and what influence us from outside to the inside. Because I face it, we have so many problems that we just ignoring it, like through our body we just ignore it. We don't want to deal with it. Oh, it's going to get better. It's just, your body is going to heal. This is what we use. It's going to heal by himself. But what we should do, help the body to heal, or are we just going to let it heal by itself? I think you are absolutely right that is the whole thing, is a whole enchilada that we need to think about. Not only, oh, don't eat dairy, or you are gluten free, you have to do this. But you have done a lot of research, been involved with a lot of research. What people should do right now, in a very short explanation, that to have a better body, like not physically but healthy,
Sure.
and they can kind of help them to prevent injury, what they should do.
Yeah. So I think physicality, if that's something that you're working on, comes as a side effect of health. So if you focus on doing healthy things for your body, which is going to be dependent on you. So, some people are like, oh, I need to go run and that's going to be really healthy. Well, maybe. Does running cause your knees to be really unhappy? Is it pushing your body too hard when you're in a depleted state? Maybe you need to start with yoga and then work your way up to running. And, I tell, like, I'm also a yoga teacher. And so it's like, I think all yogis should weightlift and I think all weightlifters should do yoga. So
Yoga.
it's like, it's the blend and it's the balance and it's finding that balance for yourself. But if I had to really simplify it down, it would be starting to learn the language of your body. And when something gets upset, doing self-care to bring it back to baseline. Whether that self-care is eating more carefully for your body, which, the way obviously none of this is medical advice, but the way that I generally direct people is like a paleo diet is a good approach for the most part, because it's the whole foods. So think just like eat whole foods that haven't been processed and try to stay away from the toxins that people put on them, like the new like coating that they're putting on fruit, or pesticides, things like that. Just like we can't control everything, but do your best, like control what you can, and move your body every day in some way, even if it's just going for a 15-minute walk. They have shown so much research that just walking every day can have significant cardiovascular and overall health benefits. Preferably on that walk, like give yourself some time to just be present, or maybe like listen to a podcast you enjoy, or listen to some music, or just the silence. Preferably don't listen to the news or something
Yeah,
having to do with
absolutely.
work, right? You need to give your brain a break. And that's also kind of what meditation is. It's giving your mind a rest. And I liked what you said about how you struggle with meditation, because I think it's really common. So I want to come back to that in a moment. But
Yep.
the other piece is sleeping, like making sure you actually get quality sleep,
Yeah.
trying to not be on your phone late at night right before you go to sleep, because it changes your chemistry. Not just like the blue blockers, but like the interaction with your phone and all the dopamine hits you get from all the tech interaction, and just trying to find a way to balance in your life. And that can look different for everybody, because I know some people have kids, or some people don't have support systems, or whatever. Like, just find something that works for you. And community is another huge part of it. Like, I collaborate with a couple different companies that put together community events and corporate wellness training, so that people can come together as a tribe and kind of heal together and have interaction that's healthy, and preferably with people who pull you forward in your life, right? Those are the people that they say you're the 5 people you surround yourself the most with. So
Absolutely. Yep.
pick those people carefully and spend, allocate your time is the most valuable thing you have. So choose how you spend
We can buy
time.
it. That.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess just finding that balance when your body is upset, giving it a break. So maybe you go out, you have pizza and beer with your friends, and then the next day you eat really well. Or like the next 3 days you eat really well. And then you go have pizza and beer with your friends again. And then you eat really well for 3 days. And it's kind of that 80-10 rule, the 90-10 rule, like
Yes.
figuring out something that's sustainable for you, and knowing that your body's going to be different than somebody else's. So your friend might do okay eating those things more often, you might not. And just know that's your genetics and you, and just learning about yourself, which I guess that's probably the other big piece is take time to go inward and learn about yourself, because I think a lot of people don't
Yep.
know who they are.
Oh, you are absolutely right. You got to know who you are first before you do anything else with your body or mind. But before we get into meditation, I was talking to Mel Robbins, and this is like 3 years ago. We were talking. We were in Colorado, and she told me that do this: put your phone outside.
Hmm.
And it's been almost 3 years. My phone is on my kitchen counter. Believe it or not, Dr. Smith, I sleep much better. I don't know what it is. That I think that is stress. It's gonna ring. It's not gonna ring. That text message, that notification. I can't have my phone in my bedroom
Oh,
anymore.
your phone has its own energetic field too, messes with yours.
And it's just, and I told so many of my friends, they said, please do it. You don't know, it changes your life. And I think the one way that I cannot meditate is I cannot kind of grasp my mind that I don't know, maybe you have some solutions for meditation, but it's very hard to sit down and think about nothing.
Well, I'm glad that we're talking about this, because hopefully this will give you something fun to play with, right?
Yeah.
So I like kind of retraining people around meditation and helping them to see it as something fun and creative. And rather than this thing where you have to trap and control your mind, it's more about just completely letting it go.
Like, what do you mean? There's anywhere he wants to go, let it go?
It's more about, yes, like letting it do that, but not listening to it, right? So I was listening to something earlier, and it was comparing it to laying back and watching the clouds. And like your thoughts are passing like the clouds, and you're just observing them and watching them pass, and you're not doing anything with them. You don't have to trap them. You don't have to define them. You don't have to dive into them. You don't have to push them away. You just kind of let them float by. And then for myself, as I've gotten deeper into my meditative practice, it's also like I'll kind of observe them and just see what they are. And then for me, I'll do this practice of watching them dissolve into dust and nothing. And then they'll come back up, and I'll watch them dissolve into dust again. And then I can inhale that dust as energy back into my body to allocate towards whatever I want. So it's this way of recycling your own energy, because your thoughts are energy. And when you have a bunch of thoughts and they're all going on above you and outside of you, you're not really focused. Your energy is very scattered and dispersed. So if you can release the tether to that thing and just be like, you know what? I'm putting my phone outside of the room. The world will not go into chaos if I don't answer my phone tonight. The
Yeah.
world will not go into chaos if I ignore this thought for a little bit. So you just kind of let it go. and you just focus on being present in yourself. And you can start with body work and like feeling your breath and feeling your heartbeat and feeling your body. And then you can kind of graduate into forgetting that you have a body and letting it dissolve too, along with your thoughts. And then you
Wow.
start to reach this space of just this empty peacefulness where you're just taking a break. It's like going to sleep, right? Like, I'm not going to answer my phone right now. I'm just going to be here. And then that is the space where you can create from. And that's the idea of, manifestation energy, is like you have to get into a really calm, quiet place to be able to give a really clear instruction. And I had listened to this thing the other day that I thought was just excellent. And she was saying something along the lines of, can you imagine if you never asked for what you want? Like, you just went into a restaurant and the waitress came over and you're like, I just want food. She's like, what kind of food do you want? You're like, just food. Just bring me food. And she's like, okay, whatever. And she like brought over some bread. And you're like, I didn't even want bread. It's like, that's the universe, right? We have to be very clear about what we want. If we just
That's a good way
expected
to
to,
put it.
I loved that. I thought it was great. But yeah, like if we just expect it to show up and we never give instruction, that it's going to be confused. And the same thing kind of goes for our body, right? If we are trying to heal something in our body, there's this old saying, where attention goes, energy flows and blood follows.
Wow.
So in our body, if we want to heal something, you have to focus on it really clearly, and you have to give a very clear picture and intention and image of what you want. And then your body will figure that out, because that's what it's designed to do.
That's what I have a friend that now I understand what he says. He's like a big time meditator or he meditation. And he said he gets to the point that he step out of his mind like a space and look himself. I thought he's crazy. I swear to God, when he told me, I said, what are you talking about? And he said, you're not believing it, but I'm serious. I said, what do you mean serious? He said, I see myself. I see myself from outside that I'm controlling my mind. I said, man, this is not a matrix. And he said, I'm serious. But he meditated for years. He said, when you get to that point, you have the power of do that and see things and feel things. And it's the most like a horrible situation in his life. He said, as soon as he does that, he's releasing.
It's that returning back to the piece of you that is not your mind. It's the observer.
His soul.
Yes.
I don't know what it is.
It's the energetic thing that drives your life force. And it's like you can take a break from your life and from your stress and from your thoughts and everything that's going on. And you can go tap into that by just sitting in it. And it's that sitting in it that's like the recharging. And that is why they've shown that consistent meditation of even short periods is far more effective than like 1 hour long session once a week. And it's about changing your brain and changing your gray matter. And we're still coming to understand the brain. So like, we don't even fully understand everything that it's capable of. But if you start to give yourself a chance to tap into that larger, expansive, energetic self, that is the energy that's connected with the entirety of everything around us, all of a sudden all your problems seem really small and you can kind of relax about it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember then you just said it's a short story. It might be very interesting for you. My dad had a friend. I never forget. I was like 12 years old. He came to our house and he said, sorry, I didn't bring any gift for you, but I have a gift for you. And then me and my friend that were sitting said, oh, just threw something on the table, like a quarter, whatever. We were a kid and we threw a quarter. He said, I want to move him. And then he told my father that if I pass out, do not touch me. I'll come back. And I swear to God, I saw this with my own eyes, and it wasn't any trick or magician or anything else. He was staring that quarter, and the quarter stood up and rolled with his energy. I don't know what was that. And then he passed out for
Wow.
like, and his energy, like, and he told us, he said, I'm using my energy, and then I'm gonna pass out. Do not touch me. I will come out of it. I'm not dead. And we ran. It was so scary, but I think we are as a human, we are powerful behind our imagination with our energy. That's what my friend said. He said he can really control of his energy.
That
And
that sounds amazing.
it's just it's a it's but I'm trying to do is meditation and anything else. But we can talk. This is so fascinating about the. I'm so happy that we met and we're talking about this because this is so fascinating. I love the brain and the body and everything else, and we are really in the on Earth. We are nothing, but we are something very important, like powerful. But we have to understand our own body and mind. But you do a lot of stuff. But what is your ultimate goal, Dr. Smith? What is your ultimate goal? Who you want to be
Sure. So I think that's been evolving, which I think it should, right? I think you should have
every day?
a basic foundational why, but I think what you're moving towards should always be evolving. My foundational why came up a long time ago, and it was to help people reconnect with the depth of themselves and the depth of life. And that's why my
Wow.
practice name is Depth Wellness. And I wasn't exactly sure what that was going to look like. And, at first I thought it was just doing body work. And then I thought I was doing functional medicine. And then I thought I was doing holistic care. And now I'm starting to collaborate with these workshops for corporations because they're the
Wow.
people that I think need it more than anybody is the people who can make
Absolutely.
effective changes. And, I have a friend who is also military, and she actually was working in military and then got really sick and then came to me for help. And I directed her to meditation before we even started doing nutrition, and she started feeling better, and it turned her whole life around. She's now quit military to become a meditation coach. So she and I want to do like a
Wow.
whole sector for military stuff, but I'm working on creating a online membership mostly that's education oriented, and then people will have a collective place of like all the different people I love talking to, and that team of practitioners with all these different ideas kind of in one place. I think a number of people are starting to do that, but it's just something I've been working on for a while, and I like the idea of that. And then eventually I will probably lead retreats in some form because I think
I love the retreat. You are right, and I was going to tell you that I would come. The retreat. I'm serious. The retreat that you can learn how to meditate, learn to learn your body, listen to your body. Workshop. Man, that's the something you really should do.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think one of my favorite things is creating transformational containers for people, whether that's as an individual, whether that's as a small group program that I do online sometimes, or whether that's like a retreat where you're actually leaving your home. The groups I do online, I try to kind of create a retreat at home experience because then you're facing all of your triggers and working through them, which is more challenging than just going on vacation. But the cool thing about going to a retreat or going on vacation is it's this pattern interrupt. And I think if I could do anything in the world, the thing I want to do the most is shake people out of their autopilot and
Wow.
remind them of the depth of humanity and of what it means to be a human and a person with the capacity to think as grandiose as we do, and the richness of life, even if it's just in those small moments of appreciating the things around you. Because, the most memorable moments in our life, they're not always the gigantic ones. Sometimes they're just the really small ones where we're really present.
Absolutely.
And the combination of those is what makes life rich. And, in combination with the polarity of challenges and wins. And you kind of have to appreciate both, even if they're not always ideal. But yeah, I guess just creating a space to kind of wake humanity back up to the incredible beings that we are and the power that we have that's already inside of us, and teaching people how to become their own authority. Because that was the other thing I realized when I was going through my own health stuff was it is so lonely being a patient. Oh my
Very.
gosh. And it's so disempowering, and you feel like there's nothing you can do and everyone else has the answer, and then you realize like we're all just figuring it out, and really it's
And
about
most of us, we don't want to talk about it.
exactly, yes. So yeah, just giving people a space to be themselves while they're working on becoming who they want to be.
You know, if I know you can do that, and is a gradual work, but if you can make a little dent and then start shaking people up and they understand their themselves as a human and what they are capable or what we are capable of doing in this world to help other people, like you doing amazing work. Like, really, really, I'm proud of you. And you know, I'm going to follow you again and again, and we might have another conversation, but the retreat and everything else, because at the end of the day, we are who we are, and we have to just taking care of ourselves. Because as you just said it earlier, that the time that we can buy and we don't have that, and we have to really admire what we have and be grateful for what we have and what we can do with what we have, which is our body and the mind. But I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know you were busy. I'm gonna have to let you go, but it was fun. I learned so much, and I always tell everybody, all my podcasts, I learned so much, and this one was a great therapy for me.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad. This was really fun, and thank you for having me on. And yeah, just remembering that your body is this best friend that has been with you for your entire life and been through every hardship you've been through, and just remembering to be nicer to it and talk to it better and love it more.
And if people they're gonna reach out to you, what is the best way to reach out to you if they have any questions, you know, anything they need?
Yeah,
Is the web.
absolutely. My website is probably the easiest place that has everything in one place. It's Depth Wellness, DEPTH wellness.com. Otherwise, I always posting stuff to social media and free education, and that's just like Instagram at Dr. Christine Smith. Same thing on Facebook, and yeah, that'd probably be the best place.
Yep, I love your social media channels. It's very educational, and if you listening or watching this video, go check it out. You learn a lot because you talk about a specific thing a little bit, and I love that. And people then they get motivated to go and follow up and read more about it and learn. But once again, thank you so much, Dr. Smith. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'll look forward chatting with you next time.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.